You've probably met someone who redoes something 3 times before they feel okay showing it. Or maybe you are that person, the one who sends a text, then immediately rereads it, wondering if it landed the wrong way. The one who calls it high standards, but somewhere deep inside knows it's something else entirely. Perfectionism doesn't always look like what you think. It's not always the person with the color-coded planner or the spotless desk. Sometimes it's the person who never starts, the one who keeps waiting until the conditions are just right, until they feel ready, until they know it'll be good enough. And the truth is, that waiting, that hesitation, that's perfectionism too. Here's what perfectionism actually looks like in real life, not in textbooks, but in the quiet, everyday moments most people miss. It's the person who spends 45 minutes on an email that should take 5, not because they're slow, but because every sentence has to feel exactly right before they hit send. And even after they send it, there's that small wave of unease. Did that sound off? Did I phrase that wrong? It's the person who cleans the house before the cleaner arrives, who edits the grocery list, who apologizes for things that weren't even their fault, just to smooth something over before it becomes a problem. It's the person who rarely asks for help, not because they're proud necessarily, but because asking means admitting they couldn't do it perfectly on their own. These aren't dramatic behaviors, they're quiet ones, easy to miss, even easier to rationalize, but they all point to the same thing, a deeply calibrated relationship with the idea of getting it wrong. And here's where it gets interesting. Most people assume perfectionism is about wanting things to be good, but that's only the surface. Underneath that, there's usually something much older, much more personal. Perfectionism is almost always a learned response. It developed somewhere, in a home where praise was conditional, in a classroom where mistakes were embarrassing, in a dynamic where love or approval felt like something you had to earn, not something that was just given. When a child learns early that their value is connected to their performance, they start to manage that, carefully, quietly. They learn that if they do things right, if they don't mess up, don't disappoint, don't show the messy parts, they stay safe, they stay liked, they stay loved. And the brain doesn't forget that. It carries that pattern forward long after the original situation is gone. So that adult who rewrites the email 3 times, they're not being difficult, they're being careful, the way they learn to be.
But here's the part most people don't see. Perfectionism isn't really about high standards. It's about control. When the world feels uncertain, when outcomes feel unpredictable, when other people's reactions feel impossible to manage, perfection becomes the one thing you can control. If everything you put out is polished, rehearsed, and refined, then there's less room for criticism, less room for rejection, less room for the thing you're really trying to avoid, being seen as not enough. That's why perfectionists often procrastinate, and this is the part that surprises people. You'd think someone obsessed with doing things well would do them constantly, but the fear of not meeting their own standard is so strong, it's sometimes easier not to start at all. An unfinished thing can't be judged. A draft stays safe. An idea left in your head never has to face the world. It's not laziness, it's self-protection, wearing the mask of high expectations. Over time, this pattern becomes identity. The perfectionist doesn't just do things carefully, they start to see themselves through that lens. They become the reliable one, the thorough one, the one who never lets things slip. And in some ways, that identity feels good. It comes with a kind of quiet pride, a sense of being someone who cares more than others, who takes things seriously. But there's a cost, because that identity also means they struggle to be wrong without it hitting something deep. A mistake isn't just a mistake, it feels like evidence. Evidence that maybe they aren't as capable as they've tried to appear, that maybe the version of them that exists in other people's minds is more polished than the real one. So they work harder, they refine more, they stay a little guarded, they don't let people too close to the unfinished drafts of their life. and they become exhausted, not just from the work, but from the vigilance, the constant internal audit, the voice that says, "That wasn't quite right," even when everything was fine. That's not a character flaw. That's a coping system that's been running so long it forgot it was ever a coping system. Perfectionism, when you really look at it, is one of the more quietly painful patterns a person can carry, because it mimics strength. It looks like diligence, like care, like ambition, and people around them often admire it. But on the inside, it rarely feels like a gift. It feels like a standard you can never quite meet, a bar that keeps moving, a version of yourself you're always approaching but never fully arriving at. Once you start to see it, in yourself, in someone close to you, you can't quite unsee it. The rewritten texts, the avoided risks, the apologies for things that needed no apology, they all start to make a different kind of sense, not as flaws, but as a story, a long, careful, very human story about what it felt like to need to get things right. And that awareness, just that, changes how you see everything. If something here explained a pattern you recognize, there's always more beneath the surface. Understanding it is where everything else begins.